Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Ben Munson and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at David, Anna, or Ben at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also reach out to Jeff. Be like, hey, missed you, Jeff, at Jeff at IEN.com with missed you, Jeff in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. Oh, and subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join us whenever we go live every Thursday. Anna, how you doing this week?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I'm feeling a little pumped. It's just, we're going into that holiday weekend.
Yep.
And it's just like the excitement / anxiety of like, man, I have like another 24 hours to fill with small children. And sometimes that can be a lot. Sometimes it's as easy as, just hanging out at a park. But like, I often don't opt for what's just easy.
Yeah.
Really overdo it.
Yeah, you do. In like lots of different ways.
Like, yeah, it's no one aspect of my life.
Yeah.
Ben, thank you very much for joining us today. How you been?
Oh, I've been good. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm happy to be here. Big shoes to fill, but I'm going to do my best.
I mean, that's just because he's like unnaturally large.
Yeah,
He's
like
just, like, a big
literally.
person.
Yeah, he has literal big shoes.
Yeah, like they could fit your feet in shoes now could fit into those shoes.
Yeah,
most
I
likely.
think so. Yeah.
Your laptop could fit into Jeff's shoes, I think.
Yes.
How small it is.
My whittle laptop.
Yeah, Ben's just taking a lot of
like,
laptop.
oh, you doing a whittle work on your whittle laptop?
Oh, so cute.
Like not only are you just back to the podcast, but you're like just back to the United States, and then he just opens up the world's smallest laptop and just can't.
Yeah.
We just can't not.
You got to be striking like 3 keys
this
at once.
is how they do it in Europe.
It is. It's very European of you. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not as old school as Andy's stack of papers. But
Yeah.
I like how he does the old school like reporter where he just like picks them up and he has to like sort them up.
Just keep like
Yeah, in between while he's like putting out a cigarette. Just like. All right. Well, before we jump into our first story this week, we have a new word from a new sponsor, MSI Data. This week's episode is brought to you by MSI Data. Many field service organizations understand the technology they use in their day-to-day service operations, but they don't take the necessary steps to tap into its full potential. A new guide, your guide to field service maturity, will help you discover what field service maturity is, why it matters, and how to get started. MSI Data knows what they're doing. We're talking about 40% reduction in time wasted on inefficient efforts, a 100% increase in technician-to-office work ratio, and a 3-week reduction in invoicing time. So download that new guide now. There is a link in the live chat on YouTube, and we'll have a link in the body copy under this episode. All right, our first story this week. Vehicles keep catching fire in Death Valley. Is vehicle heat resiliency falling behind the pace of climate change? According to multiple reports, the last month has seen multiple vehicles burst into flames in Death Valley. This is America's hottest geographic location. A soft drink delivery truck recently became the 4th vehicle to catch fire within the park's borders due to overheated components. Again, that's 4 in just 1 month. The National Park Service shared photos of the charred remains of the truck. Not a lot left. Firefighters say the brakes were behind the fire. A park spokesperson said that most of these vehicle fires in Death Valley are due to brakes overheating as vehicles try to go down steep grades. This is part of the reason why car makers actually come to Death Valley National Park to test their new vehicles during the summer. While vehicle fires happen year-round in the park, they are actually pacing ahead of last year. Ben, so just downshift or kind of just stay away this time of year if you're driving a large vehicle.
Yeah. It sounds like you shouldn't be super surprised if your car starts on fire in Death Valley. Like this sounds like a dangerous place. Maybe this is a normal occurrence, but
No, it's car Death Valley.
Yeah, it has been happening a lot more. And it's kind of surprising because Death Valley is a very popular place for heat testing for automakers. So it's a little surprising to hear that, vehicles are, catching fire in the very environment where they were heat tested.
Yeah,
specifically to not catch fire, right? It's it's fascinating to read about all the different automakers that test their vehicles out there at the same time, and the lengths they go to protect information about cars and trucks that aren't in production yet. I was reading accounts where you had like Hyundai, BMW, and GM all testing at the same time out there. And then at the same time, there's like mystery vehicles that, are so heavily camouflaged that they can't really, say what it is, but they're all guessing. Like they think this is the new Mercedes, like E-Class or something like that.
Oh, that's cool.
Which sounds kind of fun, except for the fact that you have to go to Death Valley to do it. But what kind of stood out to me about this story was that they the National Park Service said that the heavier vehicles like this like soda delivery truck or whatever are the ones that are have the hardest time in Death Valley, and electric vehicles have been adding considerable amount of weight due to their batteries, and when those cars catch fire, I mean they can already reach temperatures up to like 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's in like normal conditions. So I'm wondering like when or if we see like an EV car fire in Death Valley, what is that going to be like? Is that going to be like a new sun on Earth? Like is that
the new sun in the desert?
It's like it's going to form a star.
Yeah, I did. So I did read that with EVs might have a leg up because with regenerative braking, that might actually help them cool it down because they have a different type of cooling. They don't just expect like open air cooling to cool the brakes like they do in like gas vehicles. So there's a whole cooling system to kind of keep the temps a little bit lower. So hopefully they're a little bit more prepared. But I mean, I also was surprised, man. It's like, we've been driving big trucks for a long time. We should figure out a way to make sure that regardless of where they are, the brakes don't catch on fire.
Right. Because if there's one place where people need like ice cold soda, it's in Death Valley.
Yeah.
And if you can't reliably bring it in without starting on fire all the time, that's like they're gonna look elsewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Anna, one thing that was surprising, or not surprising, but like kind of stood out to me was like the carefully worded soft drink delivery truck. And I was just like, okay, you know what? I'm going to check out the photos and I'm going to see, what actual brand it was. Because it was like they were trying to stay away from like tying any brand to it. But man, when you look at those photos, there really is nothing left. It is like a truck started on fire, burnt to nothing, and then a train ran over it. And that's what's left.
It is just like a pile of ash with some, you can kind of see like some ribs of that trailer left. That's it. There's no way you could find a logo on that thing. It was, pretty intense.
It was striking.
Yeah, it was striking. The story I thought was interesting. We got a little bit of feedback from our audience when we ran the story. I know not everyone agrees on the cause or the pace of climate change. Fine, you do you. But I want to be clear. So, we in the story we mentioned Death Valley holding the record for being the world's hottest place because they set this temperature record of hitting 134 degrees one day in 1913.
Yeah.
In the article, we acknowledge that this is a controversial statistic.
Yeah.
And the reason we said that is because while it was recorded by the World Meteorological Organization, the validity of that data is an open question right now. So Abby Wines, who is the spokesperson for Death Valley, who spoke extensively to SF Gate for this report, she said that scientists don't think that makes sense, that 134 degrees, based on a couple things. They said that the person who recorded it was relatively inexperienced. And then also there were dramatically different temperatures recorded elsewhere in the area. That's why in the article we referred to it as a controversial claim. We had a lot of people say like, well, climate change can't be the cause of this because look, this, the hottest day ever was in 1913.
Because like the new guy recorded the temperature that day and they didn't like erase it.
Yeah. So, so I just want to say that there is no agenda. I can promise you that. That was not.
Are you sure? Because some people are quite certain of our agenda.
Of the agenda.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what else to say, but I will say that, like, that aside, right? Death Valley in July of 2024 experienced its warmest month on record. Mm-hmm. It had an average temperature of 108.5 degrees. That is a fact.
Yeah.
So personally, I think it's kind of pointless to split hairs over degrees. The fact is that auto OEMs, they test these vehicles here because it's extreme heat, and the point of those tests is to ensure that they can stand up to the rigors of triple-digit temperatures. And to Ben's point, maybe they're not. Yeah. I think the incidents illustrate an important point, which is, are automakers able to keep pace with a changing climate, whether it be heat or water or snow or wind or whatever? And how much cost does that add to the equation for them? I think that's like sort of an interesting thing that needs to be looked at. Like, there's a lot more to consider when you're a vehicle developer. And I think it becomes commonplace now for like flash flood type rain events or gale force winds. Can today's vehicles take the beating that the weather is kind of handing down to us? And perhaps the more theoretical question then is, how far does an automaker's responsibility extend then when it comes to keeping you safe in your vehicle? The focus, I think, for a long time has been survivability in the event of a collision. Mm-hmm. But I think this adds a little bit of nuance to that safety equation. And it's sort of an interesting discussion point nonetheless.
Well, and I agree, like, how much of it is on the automaker, because when you read the follow-up story that was on Jalopnik, a lot of the gearheads on there were like, well, obviously, you just downshift and you take it easy. And it's just like, to somebody who is well-versed in the automotive industry, it makes a lot of sense. You just take one or two steps and you protect yourselves from like setting your brakes on fire. But that doesn't take into account just the average automotive consumer that doesn't know that thinks that their car has been tested for pretty much every scenario and should be safe enough that, the brakes don't start on fire. Joe is joining us live this week. It's always good to hear from you, Joe. He says, either way, it's hot.
Sure is, Joe. I agree.
No, that was my biggest takeaway from this too, Anna, was like, okay, let's just say this specific event was not tied to climate change, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, someone like, it's an old truck, bad, dirty brakes, got hot, and apparently there must have been like tiny bird's nests and all the wheel wells that caught fire too.
Bird's nests,
most likely. Yep. Yeah, maybe some sort of like the remains of an old cat in the back. Mm-hmm. We do have to understand that we're experiencing more extreme weather events, and we should prepare and design accordingly. And it seems to me, I don't know, like part of me feels that this huge push for EVs is finally the automotive industry and other people recognizing that. And there are other things that we need to consider when planning for this more uncertain weather future. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Ben, what are your thoughts? You cover a lot of the design engineering side of the industry. I mean, how much of that is on, like, do you think the design engineering community can keep pace with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, cars have evolved so much since they, first, showed up. I mean, they have roofs now.
Yeah, that's good. That was a good one.
Windows and stuff. Yeah, you don't have to like shove a crank into the front of it and turn it.
Yeah, that's been
like start
that's
it
been
up.
big. Yeah.
Yeah. So of course they've kept evolving and they will keep evolving. This just seems like a unique challenge. Like, and like you said, you're already seeing some design aspects in like electric vehicles that could prevent at least this type of braking related fire from starting in vehicles. So that's an example of adjusting and kind of recognizing trends, whether whatever they're related to. There's extreme weather that has to be addressed.
Maybe that's why like Apple got out of the car business, because right as they wanted to turn the car into the new smartphone, they realized it actually had to be more like a panic room.
Yeah, they just kept starting their Apple cars on fire in Death Valley.
No, don't stay in the car if it's on fire.
No, it actually, instead of more like a phone, it needs to like float, stay close to the ground in the event of winds, be able to keep you cool enough in the event that you're stuck in some sort of, desert. Not just when your car starts on fire, but like, if it just breaks down. Even if your car breaks down, would you say it was like 108.5 this year in Death Valley?
On average,
On average, that is gross.
So gross.
That's a strong pass. Like, not that it was high on the list of places to take the family.
No.
But just off the list.
Yeah.
Entirely.
Yeah, when you're reading about it, they're like, don't hike after 10 a.m. I was like, man, that is a short window.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't check out the Death Valley Park website, but like, what are the features? Just like, hey, for like a 2-hour window in the morning, it's a real great place to be.
Yeah. Like from 8 to 10, really nice. Yeah.
But then like get out of here quick.
Yeah. Wrap it up quick.
All right. Our next most popular story, troubled cruise ship maker getting bailed out in Germany. Meyer Werft has more than 3,000 employees in northwestern Germany. The company says it has built 58 cruise ships and has orders for many more, including 4 for Disney Cruises. This is enough work on the books to keep the company busy for the next 4 years. Still, the company is having money problems. So last week, the German government said it was going to bail out the major shipyard because the company is, quote, systemically relevant to Europe's biggest economy. The problem is the cost of building cruise ships. The company has to front that money, and really the pandemic wasn't any help. Yesterday, the German government announced that it will take an 80% stake in the shipyard for some $445 million. The deal comes with a state-backed guarantee of up to $1 billion to stop the company from becoming insolvent. The government says this move is going to help secure up to 20,000 jobs. And one official said, quote, the state cannot be a bystander. But I guess I never would have guessed that instead of being a bystander, they're like, we're not going to be a bystander. We're going to be the boss.
Yeah, it certainly feels like so many of those too big to fail situations that we've seen here. America has been bailing out big companies and banks, to be frank, since we've been founded, basically late 1700s. I just think it tends to be par for the course when the government decides that a company or an entity is responsible for so much economic activity that they can't, in good conscience, let that go under without like a massive catastrophe. And I think that's what we're seeing here. I guess the big question is what is on the horizon for the cruise ship industry? Because certainly this is a factor as well. You're not going to prop up a company that has no future. So looking at the data, as you mentioned, the company is booked out till 2028. Disney is a big customer. And Disney, if you look at what they've been doing with their cruise sector, it's actually a massively growing segment of their business. It's a small piece of the overall pie in terms of like the cruise industry.
I thought like the Disney empire you were talking about.
No. So I think Disney... they're responsible for like less than 5% of the revenue in the, you've got Carnival and all those big cruise companies, but Disney is growing this area, right? They said that they've made like $1.5 billion on this segment of their business. They said that cruise related revenue was a significant contributor to their overall revenue in the most recent quarter that they revealed their earnings, and that it represented an enormous opportunity for them. So you don't have to be a genius to see the benefit of holding on to see what kind of money could come from that contract. If you could be a consistent shipbuilder for a company as big as Disney with deep pockets, how far?
A seemingly endless spigot full of money.
Right. Like how far could you see that go? So I think that's certainly got to be a factor in propping this business up. They have this book of business. They ran into this horrific, unforeseeable problem that was the pandemic. The cruise industry was gutted by that. We know that. But I think that probably the German government is seeing not only the jobs benefit, but like the future economic benefit of trying to keep them, push them through this rough period.
So first to last, Disneyland, Disney World, Disney Cruise. What would you do?
First to last. Oh God, I don't know. I mean, the Disney cruise looks fun in my mind, but I feel like I don't actually want to ever get on one of those giant ships. So
Yeah.
World Land Cruise.
Okay. I mean, I think that's fair. I think just that added element of like the kids by the rails on a cruise ship, understanding everything likely fine, but I think just that anxiety, that's enough for it to be like you know,
Yeah,
that's
not relaxing.
kick in that can. Yeah. Family recently went on one. They're like, you interested? I'm like, no,
I don't think so.
there's a pass. Ben, a big part of this seems to be, and I'm honestly, frankly surprised because during the pandemic, we saw a lot of businesses that had to adjust just because of before we had the new normal, we had the unknown. And it's wild to think that there was a company like Meyer Werft that was basically sitting on millions of dollars of materials for ships that for the foreseeable future, nobody needed or wanted.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised by that too. It seemed like the financing arrangements with the cruise lines weren't adjusted during the pandemic or since. And from what I read, it sounds like when a cruise line orders a new ship, they only pay a small amount of the cost up front.
Yeah.
And that leaves, like you said, leaves the shipyard on the hook for most of the expenses until the ship is finished and delivered. In the pandemic, obviously disrupted a lot of operations. I'm sure for cruise lines as well, but I'm sure they were able to get up and running, a lot faster than say the shipyard that had this huge backlog of work. So it seems like Meyer Werft is hardly at fault here, and they're a key supplier for a lot of major cruise lines, like Anna, you mentioned Disney. So it would have been nice to see the cruise lines maybe pay a little bit more up front or do something else to kind of lessen the burden on this company. It seems like they were hung out to dry in this situation. And if they are such a key supplier, you would think they would want more of a kind of a cooperative relationship.
No, but I mean, it makes sense to me, like in the heart of the pandemic, where they're just like, hey, listen, we're going under. We need more money for materials. And they're just like, we don't know if cruises are going to be a thing anymore. Because the cruise industry kind of took one of the biggest hits of anyone, right? I mean, and except for the few that were like stranded on some for an indefinite amount of time because they couldn't find a port.
Yeah, I don't think that made anyone any money.
No, that was terrible.
I've never been on a cruise, and I don't think I ever will. But from what I understand, it's kind of fairly commonplace to get sick on a cruise.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of times something will pop up and just tear through the population there.
Yeah.
It's pretty gross.
But
you
get
it
back.
seems like something like COVID necessarily wouldn't scare off the diehard cruisers. Like, I'm going to get sick anyways on this cruise.
Might as well get COVID.
Yeah. My parents were on it was like almost a 7-month cruise.
Okay.
And that just sounds gnarly. Like they actually had a morgue on board.
What?
I know.
Whoa.
The weirdest part is too that you can't build all these different coolers.
Yeah.
So
don't finish.
So you can imagine, yeah. It's like half and half.
Yeah. Hopefully it's kind of like in the cooler for like the buffet that, is included in the all-inclusive package. But if you go to the nicer
it's
one.
split by a wall, I believe. It's not just like everybody hanging out in the same cooler.
Like the pineapple and then the morgue.
Yeah. It's like, no, it's like a
it's not like you're
wall.
opening the wrong drawer, but like, shoot, I thought,
By wall, I'm sure it was like the hospital wall where like it's a curtain.
Yeah.
So I was very surprised that the model hasn't changed yet either from like sort of essentially pay on delivery. You think that would have evolved a little bit. Maybe it is time to change that business model. I think that it certainly warrants a conversation like, hey, what's up? Not sure if you've been reading the news, but the government owns 80% of our business now. So if you could just like help us out a little bit because the family has a buyback option. I think that's one thing that's, the government's like, hey, we're going to step in, we're going to take control. But if you get back on your feet, you can always buy it back.
Yeah, it sounds like Meyer Werft is a fairly reliable supplier too. They've built like 54 cruise ships, I think the number was, something like that. So
Joe is taking his first cruise in just a couple of weeks, and we're just going to be fine.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah, it's going to be a great time. Is it a Disney cruise? And if so, get me Sebastian's autograph.
Ignore all the stuff we said.
All right, our next most popular story. Explosion at pharmaceutical plant in India kills at least 18 workers. It started with an explosion that lit a fire at an Essentia company pharmaceutical plant in southern India, killing at least 18 workers, reportedly, and injuring another 40. The tragedy happened last Wednesday at about 2:15 p.m., and it was a harrowing event. Officials say the fire was likely caused by an electrical fault and a chemical solvent leak, but the investigation is ongoing. The company is 5 years old and makes intermediate chemicals and active pharmaceutical ingredients. Some 380 employees worked 2 shifts at the plant, but many escaped because they were on their lunch break when the explosion hit. It is one of the worst industrial accidents in the area since 22 people were killed in a refinery blast in 1997. Ben, unfortunately, this story is the latest in a string of accidents that we've seen out of India where, let's face it, safety regulations are a little bit more lax.
Yeah, it's a really tragic trend, and it's especially sad because it seems like a lot of these incidents could be avoided with more oversight and consequences from the government, their regulatory agencies. As the report points out, it sounds like a lot of builders and residents knowingly ignore building and safety codes. And that's why electrical fires like this one are so commonplace. Also, from what I read, India has a kind of massive informal workforce that operate oftentimes in subhuman conditions, and that includes living in factories to avoid to avoid paying rent. It's just it doesn't seem like a sustainable situation, especially when an electrical fire can happen so easily. And if you're working with volatile chemicals like this place, it can turn a small problem into a really big one, really quickly.
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, we've seen this so often and it doesn't seem to be changing the tide. Anna, we've seen this happen with India when it comes to the pharmaceutical industry. We saw the controversy when it came to the eye drops. We always talk about the importance of taking maybe a little bit more responsibility, a little bit more investigation when it comes to your supply chain. I feel like we would see less of these accidents if everyone throughout the supply chain was being a bit more diligent.
Yeah, it of course starts with India, right? If you look at the data, 3 workers die every day in Indian factories. That's what it works out to due to lack of basic safety measures. They say the number of that is much higher for workers who lose their eyesight, fingers, or hands.
My goodness.
Despite having strict laws to protect workers, less than 0.4% of cases where employers don't observe safety regulations actually result in punishment for those offenders. So, so nothing is being done to target the people that are have control over the compliance. But experts say that it's also a training issue as well. And I think that really hits home here too, because we consider how many incidents also occur in U.S. manufacturing that are traced back to a training issue. And that's a little scary. I think code compliance issues are a little bit harder to get away with here when it comes to structures and their layouts and the materials that are used to build them. And that's a big problem, as Ben pointed out, because these fires will start and then these buildings just go up and people don't know how to get out of them. And, people are piled up, on multiple floors. And it's a disaster waiting to happen. So,
yeah, it sounded like a lot of these builders would even, forego putting in fire safety equipment. And then, like you said, if there's a training issue, even if they put them in place, it can't be guaranteed that people would even know how to use them.
Right.
Well, I mean, we saw that with the battery factory a few weeks ago where they just didn't know how to get out of the factory.
Exactly.
Because they were so unfamiliar with the layout.
Yeah. And I think too, when you talk about supply chains, this is a reminder of the true cost of very low prices that we enjoy, across the globe, chemicals and pharmaceuticals are major exports for India. The country's manufacturing footprint and their export volume are only expected to grow, notably boosted, I would say, by the pandemic. A lot of companies we saw try to decouple, and it wasn't just in America, it was other countries as well, try to decouple from China and Chinese suppliers during and after the pandemic. Well, the biggest winner from that was India. Their exports to the U.S., for example, increased post-pandemic by $23 billion. That's according to Bain. We are a big customer, but I think more economic activity could actually be making these problems worse when you consider the need for more people, greater volumes, getting them out the door faster. The opportunity is there, but the manufacturing industry has not responded with better safety practices. They're just adding more people, more capacity, and that's a recipe for disaster.
Did you say less than 1% of people with a safety problem get any sort of punishment?
Correct. Yep.
I don't even understand that.
Yep.
What is it, like accidental? Like they're accidentally fined? Like they got a parking ticket and they just call that punishment?
I don't know. I don't know why, because the laws exist. And I don't know if it's just a sort of a cultural issue and these people just continue to operate these businesses. I'm not sure.
They're pro-business.
Yeah.
According to the Times of India, the production team actually could smell the methyl tert butyl ether, or NTBE, around 1 p.m. Apparently, it's known for quite the noxious smell. MTBE was continuously leaking from a transfer line, falling through a slit on the first floor and onto this motor control center panel. MTBE, you might have heard about it because it's a common gasoline additive, but in 2005, the U.S. got rid of it. But it's still widely available and used throughout the world. Now, these MTBE vapors quickly circulated and recirculated because these air handling units kind of basically pushed these vapors throughout the entire building. So that's what kind of made matters worse. Now, what's wild is that because of the timing of it, everyone was on lunch break. And that includes the engineering and production teams. So they weren't on site to check out this leak and understand the severity of the problem. Mm-hmm. And that just compounded everything. I think that one kind of blew my mind. Like they didn't have one person that could have just been like, everyone's got to move right now. Just everyone was on lunch.
But they're also crediting that scenario as saving so many lives because so many people were not in the factory when that took place.
No, I understand that. But I feel like it's a reminder that you need at least one qualified safety production engineering person that needs to be able to, if in the event, it's so rare that things happen, right? But you need someone at all times when operations are happening that can point at something and be like, that's really bad, and who knows what could have been stopped or prevented in the event that it was caught. Because so there was an hour and 15 minutes in between people saying hey, that smells bad to the actual fire and explosion. So there was time to remedy the situation. Mm-hmm. And it was, sometimes we talk about how fast it goes, but an hour and 15 minutes in real time during an emergency, that is a long time.
That would have been enough. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know, just kind of a reminder of some of the things that maybe people get blind to or get too complacent with.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a crazy story. And hopefully things start to change. I'm hoping that, everyone recently has been talking about more and more about full responsibility throughout their entire supply chain. And I'm hoping to start seeing a little bit more of an impact. All right. Our next most popular story. 2 former union presidents among 7 indicted in a Boilermaker scheme. Last week, a federal grand jury in Kansas indicted 7 individuals, including 5 current and former high-level officers of the Boilermakers Union for alleged roles in a $20 million embezzlement scheme that spanned 15 years. The defendants, led by 71-year-old former union president Newton Jones and 76-year-old former secretary-treasurer William Creedon, are charged with widespread embezzlement of union funds. The pair led a scheme that includes more than $5 million in luxury travel and more than $2 million in salary and benefits paid to Katarina Jones and Cullen Jones for no-show jobs. Specifically, 32-year-old Katarina Jones was paid 2 years of salary while living in Ukraine and dating Newton Jones. She is now his wife. 35-year-old Cullen Jones is Newton's son. The Boilermakers covered hundreds of thousands of dollars in tuition, rent, and relocation expenses for Newton Jones's family, as well as millions of dollars in cash payments for fake vacation time. Newton and 76-year-old former Vice President Lawrence McMahon also used union funds to spy on employee emails to defend them from internal union charges. And finally, Newton Jones and Creedon drew $7 million in loans from the Boilermakers Union Fund for the Bank of Labor. Not only were they not authorized to provide these loans, but it was a complete conflict of interest because Newton Jones and Creedon allegedly demanded no-show employment with the Bank of Labor and were paid handsomely for it, including more than $3.4 million each in salary and other benefits. The defendants also include former President Truman Fairley and current Secretary-Treasurer Kathy Stapp. They're charged with racketeering, embezzlement, healthcare fraud, wire fraud, and theft in connection with healthcare and retirement plans. If convicted, they face 20 years in prison on RICO conspiracy. The indictment additionally seeks forfeiture of $20 million. Anna, the biggest thing for me, other than just the wild and rampant embezzlement, fraud, theft, everything, was just how long this took to reconcile. This story took forever. 15 years. And it's not like nobody knew about it.
Yeah, I know. And just like the scale is outrageous. All you can do when you read that is just think man, people with power.
Yeah.
They love to be corrupt.
Just also, what if you're the one family member, not getting paid? Just well, come on. You're giving $2 million to your girlfriend and your son. Come on, Uncle Newton.
That was your first thought.
Yeah,
Uncle Newton.
Help your favorite nephew out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking of the poor family members that were left out. When the getting was good.
Yeah, true. Yes, my deepest sympathies for you if you did not receive any of these ill-begotten gains. The story is very dense with details. You covered a lot of them here. I was looking back at some of the fallout when it first took place. And I think before reaching any widespread conclusions about unions and their leaderships, because I think people like to jump to conclusions there when it comes to corruption that you see anecdotally. Mm-hmm. I will say this. While this sounds like something that's permeated the culture here, the scheme was actually brought to light by the executive board, who voted overwhelmingly to remove Newton Jones despite his tenure after the financial improprieties were uncovered. And interestingly, Jones, and this won't surprise you based on what you've just outlined, but it's almost a shocking display of hubris. He attempted to appoint his own successor. Mm-hmm. He graciously retired, even though he was going to get
Yeah, you know what? It's about time for me to step aside.
Yeah. So it was he tried to appoint his own replacement, which was an assignment that would be temporary. However, was not up for a vote until 2026.
Oh, okay.
The executives who ousted him said that this was, quote, presumably in an attempt to shield he and his family from further legal liability, and acting in direct contradiction to a court order issued by the federal court. So in the end, this did not actually fly.
Who did he appoint?
I don't...
Because he took over for his dad, actually.
I know, yeah. Oh, I'll get to that.
Okay. The legacy.
The legacy. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cullen.
So when you look at the history with the Boilermakers Union, I just think there was a very clear lack of checks and balances here. Jones, as you said, took the role of president from his own father. So between them, they oversaw this union for a combined 40 years. 40 years.
And I'm sure they found all the things they stole.
That blew me away. He was also, as you mentioned here, chairman and CEO of the union-owned Bank of Labor. Mm-hmm. And then his attempt to appoint his own replacement, not to mention that there were reports that attempts by the board to oust him were met with like aggressive retaliation.
Oh, yeah.
These board members did their jobs despite an organization that was inhospitable, I think, to doing so. The executive board stated, our members work hard and dangerous jobs. As the elected leadership, we have both a moral and legal obligation to ensure that the people that are elected to lead the union work just as hard to protect the members' interests. And I was like, yeah, I mean, like they were not in an easy position to take on this fight. And they did it anyway. And so I think like kudos goes to them. You know, who knows, like you said, how long it was going on or what people knew and didn't know. We don't know that.
Well, I know some of it. We'll get into that.
But we do know that the board said, that's enough.
Yeah.
And, you know, despite the legacy of this individual and his family within the union, they said enough is enough. We're done.
I would like to step down. It's time for me to take a minute and appoint the new president, Katarina Jones. All right. Okay. Not her. How about Cullen? What stood out to me was the scale of this and just how selfish these individuals are. And so I understand how they don't care that this ruins union sentiment, like internationally.
Yeah.
Like, you know, people point at these scams and they just say, see, unions don't work.
I know.
This story will be used for the foreseeable future for any anti-union propaganda.
Yep.
And he probably couldn't care less. Even though the union is what sort of backed his luxurious, luscious lifestyle for what he was caught was the last 15 years. But come on, he didn't learn this on his own.
He was he first joined the union at age 18, so he was 73 years old, I think, when he got caught. Varying levels of leadership within there. So yeah, there's probably a lot that we don't know.
Yep, son, let me show you how you use the stamper on the checks to yourself. Ben, what would you say? There's a lot of salacious things going on in this story. What stood out as the worst? What was like the worst part of this?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm going to just go ahead and say it. I don't mind saying it. This Newton Jones sounds like a real creep.
Whoa, hold back.
Yeah, controversial statement.
I hope they throw the book at him.
Yeah.
But for me, the sleaziest part of this story was that these union officials were actually using the money they stole to spy on employees' emails and protect themselves essentially from consequences of stealing money, right?
Yeah.
So it's just it shows a real awareness of what they were doing, and the idea that if they did get caught, there would be serious consequences.
Yeah, there has to be like an escalator, right? I guess there's no greater escalator than like RICO, but if you're using embezzled funds for the intimidation and retaliation, I feel like it's a little worse than just your run-of-the-mill intimidation and retaliation.
Right. Yeah, and when I was running through, I forget what publication had been covering this for
the Kansas City Star.
Yeah, the Kansas City. They've been covering this for
forever,
like over a decade now, and they've been doing a great job. And to hear them kind of run down everything that he did, from all the private jets, expensive hotels, fancy restaurants, and I don't know, whatever he could spend money on, it seemed like he did it. And, he would bring his wife and his family members along on these unnecessary trips. Like he didn't even need to be there for the advancement or, for the good of the union, let alone, his family members and friends. And then he also gave them, these well-paying jobs where they didn't have to do anything. It's just, it's really gross. It seems like he almost went out of his way to defraud the union for as much money as possible. Like it wasn't good enough just to, skim some off the top and, make himself a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
It was almost like he was out to ruin this organization.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy how much damage was done for something that, has been part of your family's legacy, now tarnished legacy for probably a century. Yeah.
And like you said, the overall union kind of reputation, that damage, it's hard to even kind of quantify that. At least, you have a number to put with this, how much money they actually took from this union, but I mean the damage, the optics are just so bad.
Yeah.
Just how many Jones family Disney cruises did the Boilermakers fund? So just a little bit more about the history of this. It goes back more than 10 years, just on the record. So 10 years ago, that's when the Star kind of looked at Jones and some of these other execs, and they were like, you know what? They're living pretty well. And so they started looking into it. 10 years ago, Jones's salary and expenses totaled more than $607,000. That was more than presidents of the biggest unions in the country at the time. So, small red flag, published, in the biggest publication in the entire area. A follow-up 5 years later found that they were kind of just doing the same thing. So that's why when you say that the union leadership finally got something done, like, whew, they had some time, but I get it. They were facing, crazy internal attacks from union leadership. So I get why they couldn't get it done right away. But I mean, more than 10 years of just some of these issues on the record, it is wild to me. With the arrests, it came a lot of relief. One union member actually told the Kansas City Star, "This just goes to show that if you play with fire, you're going to get burned. Finally, justice." But I don't know that is the takeaway from this. It is that, like, you can have a legacy of corruption and maybe, just maybe, you might get caught at the end.
Yeah. Like, if you play with fire for 15 years straight,
yeah,
you might get burned at some point down the road.
Yeah. Near the end of your life.
Well, I mean, agree. But, keep in mind, too, that like now this septuagenarian is going to spend his golden years in prison. He will get, and all that money's gone, right? So there's no, like, the restitution thing is like no small thing.
Yeah. What they found, they have to repay $20 million. But I don't know. It's like that question when everyone's on a bar stool and just like, all right, if you could have 30 years of living a life of luxury, would you spend the last, let's say, 17 to 20 behind bars?
You have been asked that?
You've never, I mean, come on. Of all the would you rathers we've done over the years, I'm sure we've done this one.
The answer is no.
I mean, you're probably not even going to like your grandkids. Just think of how bad today's youth is.
The last
Another
17
generation
to 20 in prison? No, never, no.
But I mean, it's going to be like like before that, 30 to 40 before that, just going to be a great time.
No thanks.
All right. Well, Munson, 40 great years, Disney cruises, jet setting, families paid millions in multiple locations. And all you got to do at the end of that is likely spend the rest of your life in prison.
Do I have to be called Newton the whole time?
Yeah.
I don't. Okay, that's a qualifier.
Yeah.
Yes, you must be known as Ben the Newton Munson.
You are Newton B. Jones the entire time.
But then once you get to prison, you get like a prison nickname. So
Okay,
I don't know what it is.
I'll
think about what that would be.
Yeah, it's Newton because like day one at the prison, you say something smart, and they're like, "Okay, Mr. Isaac Newton," and it sticks for the next 20 years. They're just like finally, as you're both being released as friends, as one would do as per Shawshank Redemption, they're just like, "I never knew your name was Ben." Be like, "I've been meaning to tell you that for the last 20 years. Newton. All right. Well, let's move on to our most popular story this week. Boeing workers are angry as NASA switches to SpaceX. On Saturday, NASA announced that the Boeing Starliner will finally return to Earth. However, when the spacecraft returns, astronauts Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore won't be on it. Williams and Wilmore are sticking around the International Space Station for a longer tour. The Starliner suffered helium leaks and other problems, and the mission was originally supposed to be about 8 days. Now, it's going to be more than 8 months. NASA just couldn't be certain that the Starliner could get Williams and Wilmore home safe. So, they said SpaceX is going to bring the astronauts home. They're going to fly back on a Dragon spacecraft as part of the SpaceX Crew 9 mission. Some Boeing employees were a little critical of this decision. The New York Post cited an anonymous Boeing worker who claimed that the Starliner could have brought the astronauts back safely, but NASA didn't want to chance it. The source says, quote, They have their own PR issues and don't need 2 dead astronauts. But we didn't think that there would be dead astronauts. I mean, they got this guy's word. The Boeing worker added, quote, "We have had so many embarrassments lately. We're under a microscope. This just made it 100 times worse." Boeing is also prickly now that SpaceX will carry the astronauts back to Earth. "We hate SpaceX," quote, the anonymous employee said. "We talk, let's say trash. We talk trash about them all the time, and now they're bailing us out." Anna, this is like Gilligan's Island in space. It was supposed to be 3-hour tour, and then it was a little longer.
Yeah.
And now it's 8 months longer. And due to some more recent developments, it might be even longer than that.
Has that ever happened to you guys? Like, I got to go on a work trip for a couple of days, and then it turns into 7 months.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
February of 2025, we'll get you back.
I'm not going to be back till next year.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I've had the cancellation where there were like mass cancellations due to a weather event, and then you can't get on a plane for like 2 days. And that was just unacceptable, unacceptable. Anna, what are your thoughts on, I mean, it's understandable that Boeing's a little itchy over SpaceX playing savior here, but it didn't seem like NASA had a lot of options.
No, and like I'm trying to not read into this too much because it's just based on like just these anecdotal quotes from employees that are like grinding an axe.
Yeah.
But I mean, if this is widespread, the reaction, and I don't know that it is, I don't know if we can extrapolate that exactly, but
Yeah.
if Boeing workers were expecting this to be a vote of confidence, I think maybe they were misguided in that expectation. I realize the company is working hard to get back on track. But this has become so high profile that like what these Boeing workers acknowledge is absolutely true, that NASA doesn't need 2 dead astronauts. And guess who also doesn't? Boeing. Right?
Yeah.
I think the idea that NASA should throw Boeing a bone just because they're having a tough year, like give their reputation a boost, that's absolutely ridiculous. Like the situation is already an absolute nightmare. And it's been horrible publicity. We all know that. I don't know that anyone is going to view Boeing as any kind of knight in shining armor if they're able to fix the problem anyway. I think it's a black mark no matter what. And I assume these workers are just sounding off because this is a rivalry and they hate to see SpaceX win this time. I also think that despite the reports of a culture featuring seemingly embedded dysfunction, that there are many committed team members at Boeing who are smart, well-trained, and working their butts off to do everything above board. I know that's true. But that's not enough in this case, and they should blame Boeing for that. They should not blame NASA for that or SpaceX for that. And, I think you were alluding to this in your intro here, but like SpaceX just got grounded today because their rocket like fell over. So it's not like anyone's having a good week, just whatever.
No, and I understand the passion, right? Like you're a Boeing employee working on this entirely new program. You believe in it. You believe in the safety of it. And I think this is part of the issue with when we talk about commercializing space, right? Is that when it was, when opening it up to private entities, is that when it was NASA, right? NASA just takes no chances. Like zero, like they try to mitigate risk down to zero as much as they can. Whereas, maybe when you're dealing with companies, maybe they're willing to chance it a little bit more. Just like, oh, they should have been fine. And it's not like NASA's never going to take that chance. Like they should have been fine.
Mm-hmm. I like how the conversation about dead astronauts here too is like being framed as a concern for everybody except the astronauts. You know, like they don't want to be dead. Yeah. Like, I mean, I know it's a PR issue for everybody involved, but they also don't want to die.
Yeah.
They didn't sign up for that.
Yeah, let me step in here for a second and let me just get my point across. I would like to make it home safely.
Yeah.
No, I understand that these are the quotes of a handful of disgruntled or angry people in the moment, but Ben, when the Post was conducting this interview, they're like, man, these quotes are so posty. These are the most posty quotes ever. We can't wait to put them in all caps.
They're great quotes, kind of funny. And they read a little bit like a reporter ran into or overheard a Boeing employee ranting in a bar and got them to go on the record as an anonymous source. It's, and I think the part about hating SpaceX and being annoyed that the company that company is bailing them out feels really real. Like,
oh yeah,
they're just so funny. But like Anna said, I think it's absurd to expect NASA to take the risk at this point. With everything that's been going on, and so it just kind of reads as the ranting of one or two people. And they just seem mad. They're not really kind of talking about this logically.
Well, and I hope that this isn't the final straw on the back. I hope that Boeing is able to rally. I think that it is a healthier industry if you have at least two competitors for these contracts. Like SpaceX almost needs Boeing to succeed in order to like push each other forward.
Yeah.
And I think, as much as Boeing has had a pretty bad run lately, I know that they're looking for a win, but I would like to see the Starliner program continue and succeed.
Yeah.
It's just, this is a risk too far.
It's a tough situation for them too, from what I was reading about the Starliner now, because it's not going to return as planned. It's basically just going to be kind of reorbited, right?
Yeah.
And so whatever issues it was having with the thrusters, they may never really get a chance to thoroughly kind of look at it and find out what went wrong, because there's a good chance a lot of this stuff will just burn up on reentry. So this just worst case scenario for their first human space flight. I mean, it can't be one way. That's kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Usually you want go up and then come back.
Yeah. It's I think that's part of the deal. Unless like
that's the way I understand it.
Yeah. This wasn't like a colonization.
No.
Like this was
Pretty sure it wasn't.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So talking about what we alluded to earlier, SpaceX still has plenty of problems. Yesterday, all SpaceX launches were put on hold after a booster rocket toppled over in flames while landing. The FAA grounded the company's Falcon 9 rockets, ordered an investigation as a result of the accident, and now it's unknown how or if this grounding is going to impact upcoming crewed flights, because they had one private and another for NASA on the books. If you can believe it, and I know we all feel sorry for this person, but like a billionaire's chartered flight to space was delayed because of a poor weather forecast. And who knows if this billionaire is ever going to make it in. Like, it's going to be a rough shake.
That was Newton Jones. It's like, I need to get off the planet.
Right? I got to burn some of this money before they make me give it back. The flight for NASA that might be delayed, that was the one that's supposed to bring home Williams and Wilmore. So like, again, Gilligan's Island. It's just like, what do you mean SpaceX's rocket just fell over? What do you mean? I mean, Anna, one thing we don't talk about a lot are these astronauts and like the confidence that they need to put in sort of people that are, well, SpaceX has been doing it for a while, but like Boeing that's doing it for the first time.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to imagine. I think that these astronauts are so mentally tough, just like from their psychological profiles to begin with, and then the training that they have. They must just be able to like put it out of the, because how could you be like anxious about anything doing that, right?
True.
So,
yeah, you got to be like just very hardened to any of that. But I think that was part of the drama leading up to them even taking off, because like things were delayed, tests were not coming out right. And it was just like, man, I have anxiety that they're still going up, and they're just like doing the walk like, yep, gonna go. Everything's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
No,
Pretty incredible.
Hanging out for a minute. All right. No, we're not moving on to In Case You Missed It Yet, because we have another word from our new sponsor, MSI Data. This week's episode is brought to you by MSI Data. Many field service organizations understand the technology that they're using on a day-to-day service operational basis, but they don't take the necessary steps to tap into its full potential. And you should. So you should read this new guide, Your Guide to Field Service Maturity. If you read this thing, you're going to discover what field service maturity is. That's a good one to start with. Why it matters, and how to get started. MSI Data actually knows what it's talking about. They had clients that work with them experience a 40% reduction in time wasted on inefficient efforts, a 100% increase in technician to office work ratio, and a 3-week reduction in invoicing time. So download the guide now so you can learn more about Your Guide to Field Service Maturity. I know what all those things are.
I know.
Because I read this guide after I downloaded it. All right. The link to the download the form is below in the live chat, and you can also find it in the body copy. Let's move on to In Case You Missed It. Stories maybe not as popular, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward. Anna, we'll start with you this week. What do you have for us?
So the story I selected this week, I think kind of serves as a counterpoint to this idea that nobody wants to work, or that the new generation is entitled and lazy. As usual, things are a little bit more complex than that, even though I know people are experiencing a lot of absenteeism in their workplaces. So the article is titled, Why Your Employees Aren't Showing Up and How to Fix It. It's written by Abigail McKiernan, who's the founder of HelpLink, an organization that helps connect workers in need with organizations that can assist them in solving the problems that are serving as barriers to getting to work. So she says that sometimes all that's standing in the way is a flat tire or a pair of work boots that's needed. Her experience in nonprofit work proved to her that many people were willing to seek and motivated to maintain employment, and that manufacturing as an industry had the second highest rate of absenteeism compared to healthcare was the one industry that only had more absenteeism.
Okay.
So obviously a big problem here. She says the impediments that were keeping people from work often amounted to $350 or less in critical costs. They tended to be transportation or workwear related, but they encompass, situations that were insurmountable sometimes for these people because they were an often unexpected expense. And it was the difference for a lot of people between making it to work or not. Mm-hmm. So she is urging employers to help to set up HelpLink accounts to help automate fulfilling the needs of workers, but also direct charitable giving from these corporations themselves, something that they're usually already doing. But in this case, finding a way to funnel some of those funds into an area that would actually pay back for them from a workforce standpoint.
Yeah.
I just thought it was a really great idea. It benefits businesses and their workers at the same time, and really addresses some of those key critical issues that serve as barriers to growth. So if you haven't had a chance to check out the article, I would just take a look at this concept, see if it makes sense to you. Again, it's really sad to think that, somebody is not able to maintain their employment because, I don't know, they have a minor car repair to deal with or something like that. But it's so common and it's so true that, a really interesting idea. So
I think we've all had an example of one of those jobs, at least one of those jobs where, our car didn't start, we missed the bus. And while we might not have lost the job, we got like 3 points in our total 12 that we had for the year, or we were otherwise reprimanded for something that was, trivial and preventable. I like this concept a lot because, as you said, a lot of these companies are already doing charitable funding, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of people always talk about, like, where do we see it in our community, right? People want to see it in their community. This is not only seeing it in your community, this is seeing it in your workforce.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And, and it's not one-offs where, people are coming to you and saying like, hey, I need work boots. They're not coming to your office. This is a service that, there is this pool, I think, right? That's how I understood it. Like she would, HelpLink has like this pool of charitable contributions that then employees can draw from for approved expenses, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Right, and the platform will connect them as well with nonprofits that serve those needs, basically. So they help funnel the money to those groups, and then
Okay. So it's not just the companies that fund it; it's all kinds of charitable organizations that are kind of putting into this fund.
Yep.
Ben, what are your thoughts on this?
I like it. I think it's a proactive solution. You're kind of reinforcing and propping up your workforce with something like this, which is, of course, the backbone of any large company. And I think it also it sounds smart to kind of target your philanthropic endeavors a little bit more towards things that will actually improve, not just your workforce, but I mean these are the people in the community.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it's not just your employee; it's their family, it's their extended family. It could have it's crazy how far like a pair of work boots could go to help people.
Right. Yeah. And there's so many little things that you're right. Like so many people are just a small emergency away from having their life kind of turned upside down.
Yeah.
It's wild to me. And, Abigail actually, or Abby reached out to us just because she thought it could be a real fit for the manufacturing industry. And she's seen a handful of manufacturers already succeed using it. So, hopefully she gets more buy-in. I think, like you said, Anna, if anything, it's worth a read to understand the concept a little bit better.
For sure.
Ben, what's your In Case You Missed It this week?
My In Case You Missed It is autofluorescence imaging could light up invisible bacteria in chronic wounds. So over 6.5 million Americans experience chronic wounds, which are basically wounds that don't heal after a few months.
Okay. Is it because they're infected?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think oftentimes, yeah.
Okay.
And it's especially true for people with like diabetic foot ulcers, which affects like 1/3 of people that have diabetes. So when physicians debride or like clean out a wound, they try to get out as much of the bacteria as possible. However, they can't see it all just by looking at it. And so what these researchers are proposing is AF imaging, autofluorescence imaging, where a handheld device basically kind of lights up bacteria that was invisible to the human eye using violet light to illuminate the molecules in the cell walls of any bacteria. And the different types of bacteria turn different colors, allowing physicians to kind of more immediately determine how much and which types of bacteria are in the wound. And that would lead to better treatment, of course. While it's a little gross to think about somebody just shining a black light on your open wound, I love this idea because it just seems so simple and easy to implement, but it could potentially help like millions of people.
Yeah. And it's not like, I don't know if the term is like broad spectrum, but it's not, you're shooting fish in a barrel here, where it's like, it's a much more targeted approach. And
if it's just a handheld device, this just seems like a no-brainer. This would be something that you could introduce like today.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I like to see in the medical industry is a lot of times when these applications come up and I'm like, how is this not a thing already? Anna, what were your thoughts when you kind of read about this new treatment for chronic wounds? I think that every one of us has been touched with somebody that has suffered like an infection that's gone wrong or a surgery that's gone bad, they're kind of out of commission for a long time as they're trying to fight off infection.
Yeah, I know. Something so simple to be able to have such a huge payback in terms of quality of life, not just for making that wound heal faster, but as it says in the article, the early detection and removal of this bacteria is vital to preventing avoidable amputations. Like if you think about it in that context, avoidable amputations, like what a massive change to somebody's life if you can prevent that from happening. So very cool.
Let's make more of them avoidable.
Let's do that.
Oh my God. No, incredible story. And as we've been covering more from like the medical design engineering side of it, it's wild to me. I like it that we've been able to kind of hyper focus on it a little bit more, just because a lot of times when you're covering the industry a little bit more broad, you don't kind of get to dig into stories like this as much. And I find them inspiring. All right. For my In Case You Missed It this week, I did a story on BinMaster and how BinMaster rebuilt after a tornado ravaged its factory in Nebraska. Based in Lincoln, Nebraska, BinMaster makes measurement sensors used to measure grain bins, silo levels, and monitor tanks. Well, on April 26, 2024, a tornado outbreak hit Nebraska, decimating homes and businesses throughout the region. The National Weather Service said they were the strongest tornadoes to hit the area in nearly 10 years. Well, in the path of these tornadoes was BinMaster's 115,000 square foot facility. In less than 20 seconds, an F3 tornado completely wiped out the plant. And you can see it because in this video, a dash cam from a car in the parking lot caught it all on video. It's just incredible. You see these videos all the time, but out of context, you're just like, yeah, that is dangerous. Mm-hmm. But then you see a facility you're familiar with and you see how quickly from 1 second it's there and the next second it is not. And it is a handful of seconds. It is wild. But in just 3 weeks, the BinMaster team was assembling level sensors and wireless devices at a new plant location. A few months later, around mid-July, the company moved to its new offices at the University of Lincoln's Innovation Campus. And now, in a new plant that's just a few miles away from its previous location, BinMaster has the production lines back up and running, and the company's supply chain staff has replenished inventory for the 30,000 parts in a new 40,000 square foot warehouse. Scott McLean, who is the president of BinMaster and of parent company Garner Industries, says that the swift recovery was a testament to the unity and commitment of his entire team. I just couldn't agree more. Like during the recovery efforts, the company even certified and introduced a new line of rotary level indicators, an entirely new product to the line card, and they did it on schedule nonetheless. So I chose this story because I found it very inspirational. Mm-hmm. I thought of it as, a lot of times we see the devastation from these extreme events and you wonder how or if the company is going to be able to rebound. And I thought, Anna, this was a great story of how not only did they rebound, but because they sort of all rallied together as a company, I mean, they did it in 3 weeks.
Yeah, it was really insane. And, I think we should share too that this video came about because BinMaster sent us the footage from the dash cam and we passed it around the office and everybody was just blown away, no pun intended, by how crazy the footage is of this tornado.
Yeah.
And just to see that, if you haven't watched the video, please do, because to see the fact that this facility was decimated, to see that they're back up and running and almost like they never skipped a beat, it really speaks, I think, to the culture there. You can't do that easily with just any company. The fact that they're ready to just they're jumping up and we're going to fix this. We're going to figure it out. We're going to rebuild. And they did that. And like you said, stayed on schedule with new product launch. It's incredible.
Yeah. And I mean, relying on other locations, but having the people that can sort of adjust on the fly and, sure, skip plenty of beats, but still stay relatively on track is just really incredible. And I mean, it doesn't even look like 150,000 or 115,000 square foot facility. It looks like it's just blown over. It is. Well, not even blown over because it's just not there anymore. Ben, did you have a chance to check out the footage and what did you think of the recovery efforts in Nebraska?
Yeah. I saw the footage and it's crazy. Just like you said. And, but this is so nice to have a follow-up look because also, like you said, you never really get to hear about, or you don't often get to hear about the rebuilding, let alone something like this quickly. It's real a testament to their resiliency and morale at that company must be just through the roof right now to be able to kind of pull this off and it shows that this company really cares quite a bit about their workforce and the community around them and they put this whole thing back up together in a really short amount of time and I think it's just great.
Just the nature of something like this, people scatter because they're taking care of their own families. They've had their own destruction. so the fact that they were able to kind of stay together as a unit, I found that incredible. McLean also talked about how the company couldn't have done it without the unwavering support of its vendor partners, but also the resilience of its IT infrastructure. And I know that Jeff is watching this or listening to this live, and he's like, this is where I'm ready for it. Yeah. IT infrastructure, I'm ready for it. Integrity. But basically, because BinMaster had everything backed up, they were able to preserve everything when it came to IT infrastructure, and that just helped them kind of get back online so much faster. Because sometimes if you don't have that stuff backed up, you are starting at zero. You're reverse engineering your own products.
It's just basic blocking and tackling.
Oh,
you might say.
You might say that. One might say that. All right. Well, that is 2 in a row for you, I think, in the blocking. Oh, no. Last week was the
thing that leads to the thing.
Yes. All right.
Yes.
Taking over, Jeff.
All right, man. Next week, he's going to put a rooster on something. We're all in trouble. All right. Well, let's do our final thoughts before we get out of here this week. Anna, what's your final thought this week?
So I bought a new car a couple months ago. I've washed it a few times by hand, but I'm not very good at that. So I took it through a touchless car wash today for the first time.
Okay.
It's a 2024, so it's got a lot of sensors on it, which I believe is supposed to be a benefit, but those sensors do not understand what's happening in a car wash. And so
they thought you were like in a tornado.
I think so. Like it used to be, you could go in there and you could kind of sit and just watch the like rainbow fluff.
Yeah.
And then just sort of zone out. Yeah.
It's like some ASMR stuff.
Right. Yeah. The most stressful car wash of my life. Just like, bam, 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 bam. Like it like thought I was going to hit everything in there.
Yeah.
It really wanted me to not be in there. So
it sounds like you're like on the deck of like the Enterprise.
Yeah.
It's like you're just like shaking around.
I know. And like then I'm going through the super dryer at the end, and it's just like beep, beep. Like just hates that thing. Oh God.
It's like, what are you doing?
I know. I was just like, I was miserable the entire time. So I got to figure that out. Like I'm sure there's like some override that I can.
There's got to be a
maybe
mode.
you could get into one of those where you just send it through and you get to watch through the window, and then you may even be able to see the beeping going on inside and be like, that's funny. I remember what that was like.
Tears like falling from the headlights, like it's just having a terrible time in there, and I'm just like,
just never again.
Yeah.
Just
You'll
waving.
be fine.
You're gonna be fine.
Man, well, that sounds. I mean, at least did it come out? Is it clean? Because sometimes those summer bugs just take more than one rinse.
It's pretty clean. So I'll probably do it again, but maybe I can like trick my husband into taking it just like casually.
Yeah. Hey, while you're out grabbing dinner, could you just swing through?
Just a real quick, just stop at the touchless. It'll just take a minute.
Yeah.
And then see what happens. He'll come home and just have like a nervous tick after that.
Just like. As he walks in, just disheveled. What happened?
I just asked you to go to the car wash.
Yeah, just straight up like Tommy Boy. What'd you do? My final thought this week is I just wanted to say this last weekend, my wife and I celebrated our 12th anniversary, and I definitely knew that off the top of my head and did not need to be reminded of the date or the time at all. And I just wanted to take a minute to say that. It has been a wonderful 12 years. It's actually been way more than that because like your anniversary is like when you were married, but there was some time invested well before that.
For sure.
And just, never been happier. It was actually a really nice weekend up north where we kind of just got to quietly celebrate it together with the kids and not doing anything in a hurry. One thing that we did, we each I wanted to like make steak and pot roast because that's her favorite. She wanted to make 7-layer bars and like a taco salad, like the old school taco salad with like Catalina dressing and like Doritos and stuff because I had said I had never had that. Ooh. That's incredible. So, I mean, we cooked for like a dozen, maybe more than that. Like we're still leftovers for lunch and dinner. But it was great. It didn't have to be anything grandiose, just spending a little bit of time together. And just a good reminder of how you hit like, hey, you know what? Yeah, we can definitely do this for at least 12 more.
Yeah.
So
good.
Yeah. Love you, honey, and happy anniversary. Ben, what's your final thought this week?
My final thought is that I just got back from a trip with my wife and daughter. We were in Iceland, and it's a beautiful place. It feels like a different planet. One of the highlights for us was we went to the Blue Lagoon, which is this giant geothermal pool full of blue water with like salt and algae in it. You just get to wade around and you could stop at the bar. Or somebody will give you a mud mask to put on your face.
Yes.
Just a gorgeous place.
Sounds amazing.
The whole country is beautiful, but it's also not an easy place to go to.
How's that?
I mean, right before we even flew there, they were saying the volcano is not going to disrupt anything despite the eruption. We're like, okay, that's cool.
Wait, that was like said like what, you were landing?
No, they sent an email to us before we were in England, and then our connecting flight was about to go, and they're like, don't worry about the volcano that's going off. But so we didn't.
Did you just Google like volcano Iceland?
Right away we Googled it, and
Probably
there's these like photos. I was like, whoa, okay. And we actually got to see like lava shooting up out of the ground. It was incredible. But
Like how close were you?
How close?
Yeah, to the lava.
God, you're driving on the highway and it's just there. I say maybe 500 yards or something like that.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And they're like, it's cool. Don't worry about it. And everybody there seemed to be totally fine with it too.
Yeah, that is like the one thing my childhood taught me was that like lava, stay away.
Oh yeah, they don't want you to go into the. They were like, go up and get a scoop. Take it home with you or something like.
I feel like this spoon should be fine. Like it's metal.
Yeah, it was a little weird because they had said this place we went to. They're like, you can't go this way, you can't go that way either, but you can go this way. And the way they sent us the road sign, it was actually they had just crossed it off like it didn't exist anymore.
Not a road
and lo and
anymore.
behold, you take this road and it does exist for a while, but then you get to a point where clearly lava had flown, kind of flowed over it and ruined the entire road. So then, they send you off and you get there and it's fine and you figure it out. But it's an incredible place, but it's not for the faint of heart, I would say.
I think if you went on vacation and like went everywhere from like, martinis and a mud mask to volcano eruption, I feel like you really got a lot in during that vacation.
Yeah, for sure.
You got to be ready there. I mean, we were like, it's summer in Iceland, but the first night we tried to go to like this music festival that was happening downtown, and then we only made it like halfway from our hotel because you could not feel your face like halfway because it was only like 40 some degrees plus the wind was like 25 miles per hour.
Okay.
But yeah, you could definitely see that there was a lot of people that were used to this that were just fine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's like we're getting ready for that Midwest winter, right? Like where all of a sudden it drops to 40 degrees here and we're all bundled up, and then by the end of winter, like 40 degrees means you're in shorts. Mm-hmm. So Iceland, go, don't go? What's the advice?
Oh, would definitely recommend. Just watch out for volcanoes.
Should be relatively simple. Is it like, I feel like I want to throw change in it. It's kind of like a wishing well. It's like,
No, and part of it, like my platonic idea of a volcano is like the mountain, and then it's just like you built in like science class.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. But this was just like shooting up out of the ground.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Man.
So, yeah, it may be tougher to avoid.
Yeah.
If it's just going to pop out of the ground anytime now. But it's an incredible place.
No, that sounds like a great adventure. And you got some time to relax, right?
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. All right. Well, before we get out of here this week, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, Anna, or Ben at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first, or subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can join us whenever we go live. For Ben Munson and Anna Wells, I'm David Manty. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we will see you next week.